so I figured I would take you around the gym from time to time through the videos and change up the scenery just a little bit. Anyway, we got a question from a 4-stripe blue belt named Shannon, who's getting ready for a local competition. This is the first blue belt tournament that she's had. She's been a university student for a while, and so she hasn't been able to compete, and she wants to mark this off the bucket list, right? She wants to compete before she becomes a purple belt. And she finds that right now in this local competition, she's on the cusp of 2 different weight classes. There's a weight class below her at 141, and there's a weight class above her at 152. And right now she's 146, and this is with her training 6 days a week, eating really well, energy levels are high, things are good. And she's wondering, should she bother cutting the weight to 141? Because right now she's currently signed up for 152. So Shannon, thanks for the question. And I've been on both sides of the fence on this as far as cutting weight. I've cut as much, like my very first tournament in Jiu-Jitsu, I cut 7 pounds, came in at 193, cut to 187. For MMA, which you do the day before, this weigh-in for you, I believe, is the same day. But for Jiu-Jitsu or for MMA fights, I would cut as much as 15 to 22 pounds in some cases. So again, a lot of weight there. So I'm no stranger to it. But I found that I don't like cutting weight for Jiu-Jitsu very often. So I'll give you a couple things to think about. First off, your weight cut's not going to be that big of a deal if you want to cut it. I'll just say it like that. It's not too bad, so you should be fine. But if you're not a seasoned weight cutter, it's typically something that will drain you a little bit more than it should. And the thing about this with cutting weight in general, when you're getting ready for a competition, you are trying to do this with performance, right? You're raising the volume of training typically. You're doing more days in the gym, more times training, right? And then you will then push the performance up because you're trying to go in more intense. You're trying to go harder. So if you were to look at some graph, your performance is having a sharp uptick. And then on the other thing, you have this inverse relationship with the amount of fuel that you're giving your body to make this happen, right? You're saying, okay, I'm cutting weight, so I'm going to decrease my calories and overall intake of food, and so you're having this thing going on. And eventually, this is going to come down eventually. There's just no way it can do this for too long. Because what will happen is you'll go in, I experienced this multiple times when I would cut weight. Even if I would eat really well and clean, you're still going to have a decrease. You go in, you train really hard one night, right? But you can't eat as much food as you'd want to because you have to bring your weight down a little bit. Okay, so you gotta eat a little bit. You're still eating well, but you gotta bring down the calories a bit, so you can't eat as much. Sometimes you don't sleep as well. The next day morning you get up, you don't feel quite as recovered. You feel a little like, oh man, I'm kind of beat up from the next day. Then that day when you train, you're not gonna feel as good, right? You're just not, because you're not giving your body the resources it needs to repair itself and to get ready for the next day. And you'll find that you have a decrease in performance, which can mess with you mentally. I remember my very first fight when I was shedding weight, I was like really, until I knew what it was, right? I was really, because I had to bring my weight down significantly, I was really getting upset because I was in the gym and I was going with people and I was having trouble with people that I normally didn't have any trouble with, but because I was so friggin' fatigued because I was just trying to like starve myself because I didn't know how to cut weight correctly, I just didn't do well. And so unless you're like a seasoned weight cutter, I wouldn't even mess with it. Another thing to think about is that Jiu-Jitsu has open weight classes, right? Open weight classes is a significant thing. And I say this because I think that for Jiu-Jitsu, one weight class or so, it matters, it does matter, especially at the higher levels, but in most places, it doesn't really matter that much. I mean, how often when you're in the gym do you roll with people that are around the same weight class? They're all over the place. I bet on a day-to-day basis, you roll with people of huge varying like weights, right? Probably biggest to smallest. But in MMA, you don't have anything like that. And I just share this because obviously in MMA, it's very necessary to cut weight because there's you can't have like a Demetrius Johnson versus a Francis Ngannou in an open weight fight. It just wouldn't make any sense. You'd be like, this is not happening, right? This shouldn't happen. But in Jiu-Jitsu, I've seen multiple times where smaller people have beaten bigger people, much bigger people, right? Even Chad years ago would compete at tournaments. He would be 130, like as a kid, like 16, 17 years old, and he would be beating people that were like 100, 150 pounds heavier than him. Routinely, right? And I know that I've personally beaten guys much larger than me, and I've also lost to people that are a little smaller than me. So it can go both ways. So I just say that because, again, a lot of times people, especially in the beginning, early on, they want to cut the weight. They feel like they're going to get some sort of advantage from it. And I've just found from my own personal experience and from my experience as a coach with my students, in most cases, unless you're really comfortable with cutting the weight, unless it's something you're used to, I would just steer clear of it. And also, with this tournament, you haven't competed in a while. You're going to go in there with a little bit of mat rust. It's just inevitable. And this tournament means something to you, right? You know you want to win this. You want to be a local champion, and you want to win this blue belt tournament. So you're going in there. As a coach, I would want to take out as many variables as possible. I don't want you to be obsessed with your skill. How many times have you guys seen this? If you have a buddy that's cutting weight, you get there, they're always looking at their weight. They're like checking it before class, after class. They're at home checking their weight. They're all the time checking the weight. When they get there the day after the tournament, they're stepping on the scale. They have their food and their water, and they're like, oh, am I on weight? man, screw that. Like, I would want you to be focused on how am I going to win? How am I going to beat this person? What are the techniques I'm going to use? And during training, I want you to be so well fueled so you can just burn it up and just push yourself in training every single day, feel recovered, well rested, and then the next day you're ready to go again. So again, I would advise you not to cut weight, even though it's a small margin. It's not that much. It's only 5 pounds. If you want to cut the weight, just make sure that after you're done cutting the weight, you rehydrate quickly. Some good things to do are some dextrose supplements with some electrolytes in them. You can do some stuff like a post-workout type stuff. That stuff I used to use it all the time when I would cut weight. It would help give me a jolt so that I could actually compete later on that afternoon or that morning. And the last little thing, I'll just throw this out there before I'm done, Shannon. As a woman who's a blue belt, you might find that there are fewer of you. Now, this is true for men too, but for women, there are just fewer numbers of you guys. And so I've had this happen multiple times with some of my women when they compete at tournaments where they get there, they show up, they made a weight class, and then they get pushed around into different weight classes depending on where they need them because they don't have anybody. So they're like, okay, you've got to go up or you've got to go down, it just depends. And so you might cut the weight, and then you find that, boom, they're gonna push you up. Or you might not cut the weight, and then they're gonna push you down on it anyway. So just sort of consider that with your competition as you're getting ready. But again, that would be what I would say to you, and I hope this video is helpful to you, Shannon, and good luck to your competition as a blue belt.